Welcome, welcome everyone. We're going to give it a few more minutes, and we have some folks in the waiting room still trying to join. We're just giving it a few more minutes. We have some folks in the waiting room still trying to join. But welcome. So nice to see so many familiar faces and some new ones.
Wow, people from all over. Somebody's on a bus right now. Ontario, Riverside, Fresno, very hot Fresno, I see. Yes. San Diego, Bay Area, somebody in South LA, Carson, Denver. Hi, Vanessa. Thank you for joining from Denver. Norco, I love the horse right next to that. Welcome, Paula.
All right, well, I'm going to get us started as we get folks joining. Because before we introduce the speaker, I just wanted to welcome everyone. And for those of you, I know most of you, but for those of you that I don't know, I'm Diana. I am the Director of Programs at Hope. And thank you for joining this second session of the Hope Summer Refresh series. This series is intended to provide alumni of our leadership programs with continual education opportunities. Today's a really exciting session. We have quite a few registrants, and it's one that's been requested by alumni of our college program and the Hope Leadership Institute and the binational program for some time. So we are very excited that we found a fantastic person within the network to provide that for you. I'm not going to introduce the speaker. I'm going to introduce the person that will introduce her. But before I do that, I wanted to just share that today's speaker, Stephanie, is a Hope 2023 Binational Fellow. And I wanted to share a little bit about what the Binational Fellowship is. The Binational Fellowship is an executive leadership program for outstanding Latina professionals, and you'll see Stephanie is one of them, who through increased competence in national and global economic and security issues can make urgent and long-lasting improvements in the lives of Latinos, both nationally here in the U.S. and globally. If you would like to learn more about the 2023 fellows, you can visit our website, latinos.org. Make sure it's .org, and you'll see their bios there. So thank you so much to Stephanie for doing this for us. But to introduce Stephanie formally, I do want to introduce one of our newest additions to the Hope team. We are very excited to have Leah Gonzalez join the Hope team as Senior Program Manager who oversees the Hope Leadership Institute. So Leah, I'll turn the program over to you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Leah Gonzalez, and I am the Senior Program Manager at Hope. As Diana just mentioned, very happy to be part of the Hope family, but also very happy to welcome you all to the second series of a workshop, right, that we're having just open to everybody in our Hope Network and beyond, right? Either if you're a college student, a professional, it's an opportunity for you to learn and take something new. I know Stephanie opened the chat and welcomed a lot of us already, so we already took that time to drop where you're connecting from. Please, if you haven't yet, we would like to know where you're joining us from today. You know, if you want to share the city, the office that you're representing. We are a Hope family. We always want to be connected with one another to make sure that we are growing as Latinas, right? But we're also gaining new skills. So I don't see anybody else participating in the chat, but if you haven't, this is the opportunity to do so. Thank you, Karina Quintanilla, and all the other people who are connecting from different parts of California and across. You have some from Denver. So thank you once again for sharing. I encourage you to feel free and comfortable to use the chat, raise your hand if you have any questions, thoughts, as we go along with this series. I know we have a very set time of an hour, so I want to make sure that we're using all the time and use Stephanie, as I know she's going to drop a lot of knowledge with us for us today. So I'm going to go on and introduce our speaker, Stephanie Castellanos from California. She's a justice and equity strategist, national facilitator, and the founder of Uproot Talent, an award-winning boutique talent advising and executive search firm that specializes in hiring and keeping leadership of the global majority. Her commitment is to co-create equity in the workplace stem from her experiences as a daughter of immigrant and as a single mom, navigating higher education as the first person in her family to graduate from high school, 2 decades of grassroots organizing, and growing up as a kid from Inglewood. Her experience includes leading the talent, DEI, and B, and recruitment strategies for multiple startup organizations, including founding a multi-sector grassroots coalition dedicated to recruit and retrain teachers of color and matching over 600 leaders to nonprofit foundations, public school districts, child welfare agency across the country. Stephanie's expertise goes beyond the professionalism realm. She's a co-founder of a standing mentorship program, Cambio Academy, for girls of color, while a student at UCLA. It's this life experience that Stephanie centers and uplifts in all she does. Please join me in giving Stephanie a very warm welcome. Thank you, Stephanie, for being with us today.
Thank you, Leah. So, that was like a long, it's always like weird when somebody's reading your bio. I don't think I'll ever get over that, but thank you so much for that introduction. I definitely appreciated it. And also to Hope for creating this space and opportunity for us to talk about really a topic that we don't talk a lot about, or don't talk, well, I would say bias, enough about. So I want to first start off before I give my own radical introduction as well, to share that this is a workshop, right? What the difference between a workshop and a workshop, and since we're talking about building your brand, this is a registered trademark. Workshop are learning experiences, unlearning experiences, and relearning experiences specifically designed to disrupt the status quo, really thinking and designing for people like us who have been through similar experiences, who are also first to go to college, who are also first gen, who are also navigating spaces that aren't necessarily designed for us to thrive. So we provide tools, resources, and strategies for you to not only navigate, but to thrive, not only in the workplace, but in your career and in your personal lives. So I want you to engage, like Leah just shared in the chat. You can unmute yourself. This will not be me talking the entire time at all. So I want you to engage. And if you do have something to take notes with on the side, there will be moments where I'm going to ask you to reflect, to brainstorm, and to think. And then there will be a moment also for us to break out into pairs. So a breakout session, hopefully, if we can get through and have enough time to do it, I would love for you all to get to know somebody new in the space and build that connection with somebody else in the space. So as we get into that, I'm going to share a little bit about myself. So who is Stephanie Castellanos, right? You heard a long bio. You might have caught some things in there, and some other things might have been like, ooh, that was a lot. First things first, my pronouns are she, her, and ella. I am born and raised on occupied Tongva territory, which stems from these Santa Barbara mountains all the way down a little bit north of San Diego. And with this in mind, and starting the conversation with this in mind, before I say that, yes, I am proud to be born and raised in Inglewood, right? For people, I saw somebody in South LA here, so I know we're neighbors. Some other people who maybe know Inglewood from it being on the news or music or hip hop. For me, Inglewood and my community is so much more. It is a community that is rooted in organizing, that is rooted in predominantly being a Black and Brown community and Black and Brown unity. It is a community that shaped who I am and why I do this work. And so I always start by my radical introduction by sharing more about one, that it's not lost on me that I am also Mexican. My parents are from Mexico. And despite my parents being immigrants, I am a settler on this land, right? And with that to really root and ground the work that we do, is particularly as a Latina who is white in this space and the work that I do. It is important because the brand that I have, right, is also about unpacking and really dissecting and thinking about our identities and how they impact the world, how they impact how we show up in the workplace. And I couldn't start by talking about myself without first recognizing that and acknowledging that piece of who I am, right? Also who I am, you see here is a picture of my mom. She's rocking her 80s hair. As you can see, she's looking fly. We're on the front steps of Redwood Avenue on the west side of Inglewood, right next to Century and Arbor Vitae, where I grew up. You see my brothers who are 5 years older than me. They're twins and they're on the steps too. What you don't see here is my little brother. He wasn't born quite yet. He was born a few years after that. And also what you don't see here is a dad, right? And so for me, a lot of the perspective and who I am and how I see the world is really behind waking up every morning and seeing my mom work 2 or 3 different jobs and being a hustler, right? Whether that be as a school bus driver, whether that be on Saturday mornings when she would take me to downtown, the flower district at 5 a.m. and I didn't want to wake up, but we would get flowers from the flower district and she would make flower arrangements and we would sell them on the street, right? So really coming from that perspective, my experience as a kid of a street vendor as well, also a kid of somebody who cleaned houses, right? My mom was, as a single parent with 4 kids, was always thinking of hustling and how she was going to make that next $1 or $2 to support us. And so she also cleaned houses. And I was the kid that went with her on the weekends to clean houses as well. And she always put me to clean the bathroom. So I'm a really good bathroom cleaner. But I think I take on a lot of that through my mom, right? And a lot of growing up with her and hustling. The other thing that, you know, when you meet me, you will know is that I'm also the granddaughter to a bracero. Shout out to anybody here who is a descendant, who still has, you know, and this is not that long. My grandpa is still alive, right? My grandpa, Di Bracero, who came to this country from Zacatecas, migrated to the border of Mexicali. And really my family grew up in Mexicali because he was going back and forth on the border as a bracero. And so it's never lost on me that this is the history of my family, of my ancestors. And it's never lost on me that my grandpa is also been subjected to oppression, to systems of racism. I remember talking to him not that long ago, and he was telling me about when I was learning a little bit more about the braceros, and I brought up to him, you know, I didn't realize that you were sprayed with pesticides every time you crossed the border because they thought you brought diseases with you when you were working on the fields of California and Texas, right? And so that history is something that is a part of me. That history is what's important for me to recognize and to understand. And as you can see in the work that I do, it's what part of the reason why I do it, right? We can't understand who we are without looking back and understand where we come from, right? And so for me, that has been an important part of who I am. And why I do a lot of the training, right? I'm a diversity, equity, inclusion trainer, right? I teach around anti-oppression. And so it's important for me to recognize the ways that I've been impacted by oppression. As you can see, this is not a fake background, y'all. These are real plants. Shout out to all the plant parents here, but my grandpa was also a gardener. And on the weekends, yes, I was always working on the weekends as a kid. I went with him to go work on the jardín, right? And he would go work on these mansion houses in Los Angeles. And I remember driving in his little truck from Inglewood, and we would get on that 405 freeway and drive up the 405 freeway and exit right there on Sunset. And we would go and work in the houses in Bel Air and Brentwood. And I would pass this little campus called UCLA. And never in my life that I imagined that I would be attending that campus later on, right? But a lot of my love for plants, a lot of my green thumb comes from my grandpa and the fact that I used to help him plant plants, rake. And at the end of the day, he would take me to Thrifty Ice Cream right there on Olympic, and he would get me a 2-scoop Rocky Road ice cream. And that was my gift for helping him throughout the day, right? And so that has led me to do this work, right? It has inspired me to share the knowledge, to not be a gatekeeper, right? To not keep the learnings that I've acquired over the last 20 plus years but to share it with you all, to share it with people who grew up like me, to share it with other women who identify as women of color. Sometimes these are the conversations we don't have, right? And I think for me, I've been almost in every single state across the country. I've spoken and done trainings with over 23,000 people around the country. And that is stemming and rooted in my experiences growing up, my lived experiences, and my story of how I share it with you all, right? It's led me to work for President Barack Obama and work in Florida. It was one of my first jobs right outside of college when I graduated from UCLA. I was managing an office in Broward County, which is the swing county of Florida, knocking on doors and really understanding presidential politics in a way that I never thought I would as a kid from Inglewood, growing up in the way that I did, right? And so I'm now, yes, a founder. Yes, I run a boutique search firm. We work to get more executives who look just like us into positions of power to change social impact organizations, right? And as you can see, at no point, right, in my introduction, did I share my titles until the very end, right? Because we are so much more than what we do for a living, right? We are so much more. And oftentimes we are told or we are indoctrinated to say that our value is based on what we do for a living, what your job is. Tell me what you do, right? How often do we get that question? And if you're in college or you're a young professional, you're probably feeling the weight of that, right? What's next for me? What is the person next to me doing? How are they navigating their career, right? So this is not your traditional building your brand workshop, right? This is an opportunity for you to spend time thinking about, who am I? What is my story? How do I share that story with the world? How do other people see me and my story, right? And so I call this a radical introduction, right? I let you get to know me and uncover, like an onion, parts of who I am that normally requires vulnerability, right? It requires you to open up and trust the people in the space, right? And so I want you to think about that. What is my radical story, right? How do I share that radical story with the world? And especially now that we have social media, we got LinkedIn, we have all of the different platforms. We got TikTok, we got Facebook for people who are here a little bit older and have Facebook. We have Instagram, we have we got Threads now, we got Twitter, right? There are so many ways for us to share our story, right? And I can honestly tell you that my brand, right? I have not gone out and searched for clients, not once since founding my company, right? It has all been relationships. It has all been the relationships that I've poured and nurtured for decades, not just since college at UCLA, right? I've been in the workforce for over 14 years now, right? And I can honestly say that it is the small opportunities that we have to connect with each other. I see my mentee in this space right now, right? I see people who I've learned through or met through other walks of life in this space right now. And that is by design, right? That is my brand, right? And so I want you to think about, what is my story and how am I sharing it with the world? You're gonna have a moment to think about that as we get in. So let's get into this a little bit more. All right, so I want you all to, if you're sitting down and you've been sitting down all day, stand up, right? I've been kind of standing all day, so I'm gonna sit here. But what I want you to do is, let me see who's in this space here. I want you to move around. I want you all to stand up. If you can't stand up, if you want to stand up, right? This is an opportunity for you to move around. Now, I want you to fold your arms. I'm gonna do this so you can see my arms. I want you to fold your arms. All right, I'm folding them. Now, Sonia Linares, is your right hand over your left or your left over your right?
My right was over my left.
Okay, are you a right-handed?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, interesting. All right, let's see. Karina Quintanilla, left over right or right over left?
Right over left, also right hand dominant.
Also right-handed. Okay, all right. So I want y'all to shake it out. Do a little, what we used to call Harlem Shake from the East Coast. If you're here from the East Coast, all right, we're gonna do it. Now I want you to do the opposite. Do the opposite. So if your right is over your left, now do your left over your right. Ooh, okay, some of y'all are hesitating. I see you. Some of you are like, wait a minute, what? Karina Quintanilla, who just shared, tell me, how does that feel?
It feels awkward. It is reversing muscle memory of what I'm used to. That's not a natural posture for my arms.
Mm-hmm. What about Andrea Camacho? How are you feeling doing the opposite?
It took me longer than I would have thought.
It took you longer.
I kind of had to like wait. What am I doing?
Yeah, you got to kind of pause, right? Thank you for sharing that, Andrea. What about Sonia? I know I just picked on you earlier. How do you feel doing the opposite?
Yeah, it felt unnatural, so I had to think about it a little bit more.
Okay, let's think about why that might be the case in a second. But before we do, I want you to shake it out one more time. Shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. Okay. Now I want you to just fold your arms. Kimberly, did you go, Salinas, did you go to your original position or position number 2?
No, I went to my original position.
Lea Gonzalez, yeah, I see you not. Did you go to your original position? Original position. I want you all to take note, right? Why did we do that? Why do you think Kimberly, why do you think you did that?
Because it feels more comfortable.
It feels comfortable. That's a good one for sure. Lea, what about you?
Same, but I think I'm used to it already. So just automatically, that's right now.
You're used to it. Yes, you are used to it. Somebody earlier, who was I think Karina, you said muscle memory.
Yeah, and I've also noticed being aware of my posture that depends on who I'm listening to and my reaction. Sometimes my arm will just, my hand will sit on top of the arm. Sometimes it'll get tucked in. I realize when I'm being more defensive or a little skeptical of what's being said, I realize that my hand gets kind of tucked in. Just awareness of
awareness. That's good. So yes to all of that, right? We can let go of our position now. All right, you can relax, you can sit down. All right, thank you for participating in that brief activity. But why are we doing that when we're talking about building your brand? Right? Oftentimes, just like we did right now, right? We are so comfortable doing a certain thing that oftentimes, unless we plant a seed, you're not even thinking about it. How many times have we folded our arms and don't think, do I do right over left or left over right? No, you just do it, right? In the same way, you are receiving messages from the world every day that are coming into your brain and they're indoctrinating us, right? How should we be? How should we act? This is my gender. You should be this way. You identify as this. You should be that, right? We are getting all of these messages from the world and we are digesting it. Whether we like it or not, we are consuming it, right? And so building your brand is about attention to your intention, right? Building your brand is about self-awareness about who you are and why you do things. Right? In the same way we had to pause and think, I want you to use these next 40 minutes to pause and think about how do I put what attention do I give to myself, my story, and how do I share that? What's my intention to share that? And what is the message that I'm giving to the world? Right? So it was a quick activity, but it really is to digest and think about what does that look like for me? And how am I becoming either more self-aware, right? Or paying more attention to the intentions behind everything I do, right? Because people are getting those messages about you, whether you like it or not. What you put into the world, that post you just posted, people are making an interpretation about who you are, right? Whether you like it or not, it's happening, right? And so other people will control our stories, especially as women of color. They will control the narrative of who you should be because you are X, because you grew up in Inglewood, because you are first gen, because you're a kid of immigrants, because you're an immigrant, right? Of who you should be. But you have control, right? And tell your story before other people tell your story, right? And that is really at the nature, right? What I call and what we call at Uproot Talent, your multidimensional framework is you are so much more. There's so much under that people don't get to know about us, right? A lot of times people are only seeing what's on the surface, but what they don't get to see when you see this person grounded in roots are your core beliefs. It's your cultural capital. We'll talk about that in a moment. Your lived experience, your community, where you come from, your power skills, what you love to do beyond your profession, right? These are the things that oftentimes in our brand are caught in the weeds and don't get surfaced, right? Don't blossom, right? And so I'm here to tell you the opposite, right? Who you are is why people will gravitate towards you, right? Your authenticity is your magic, right? And so let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So these are 3 questions that I want you to think about, okay? Your first one is, who are you without the titles, the accolades, and the career accomplishments that you've had? Who are you? So if you have a piece of paper next to you, you have, pen, pencil, whatever you want to write with, I want you to start just brainstorm. Who am I without these things? What do I love? If I was to describe myself without saying my title, who would I say I am? Right? Now, the second question is actually harder, right? The second question is, how would you describe what you do to a 5th grader? Right? And now this is a hard question. Why? Because you have to really make it digestible, right? A 5th grader is not going to understand all the things I do, right? Not in the way that I normally would explain it. But how do I break it down for people to make it digestible to a 5th grader, right? And so I want you to think about that too, as you're thinking about who am I without my titles, the accolades and career accomplishments that I've had. I want you to think about, how would I describe then who I am, what I do to a 5th grader, right? In basic layman terms, right? None of those fluff words, none of these big words that often we feel like we have to use in corporate or professional, quote unquote, professional spaces, right? And then I want you to think about, I shared a lot about my identities earlier in my radical introduction. How do your intersectional identities, right? That could be race, ethnicity, age, marital status, that could be, right? All of the different isms that exist, right? All of the different identities that make you who you are. I'm a kid of immigrants. I'm a daughter of a single mom, right? I'm a sibling, I'm a sister, I'm an aunt, right? I'm all these different things, right? How do they shape how who I am and how I share it with the world, right? How have they shaped that? So these are 3 things. You don't need to have all the answers right now, but you are going to digest and reflect on that, right? So let's go ahead and move along. Now, does anybody want to share one person just to kind of get the juices flowing, brain flowing, your response to any of these 3? Is anybody open to share?
I'd like to share. I wrote an answer to the first question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alexia. Pronouns she, hers. So for the first question, I wrote, I am the proud eldest daughter of Mexican immigrants from Compton, California, who is energized through service-based leadership.
Oh, you did that too succinctly too. That was a 1 line. Well, shout out to you, Compton, right next to Inglewood. I love that. I love to hear that.
My dad worked at Inglewood.
Hey, I love that connection. So thank you, one, for sharing that with everybody. And also, I really appreciated that you connected it to your family, right? For you, you connected it to community and family. All right, does anybody, one other person want to share? Any of these questions? All right, go ahead.
So for number 2, I make sure all the metal that we buy gets sold, and I keep the toilet paper stocked.
Okay, I got that in a 1 line, right? That was a headline right there of what you do to a 5th grader. That was clear. I feel like other people were nodding their head, right? They were like, yep, I get exactly what you do. And that was great. I thought that was really great. So thank you for sharing. All right, we're going to digest this and do a little bit more with this, okay? So let's talk about your personal brand, right? So unmute yourself or type in the chat, right? What do you think when you see the following? Unmute yourself. Go ahead, just shout. What is it? When you see Michael Jordan, what do you think?
Champion.
Champion. What else?
Accomplished.
Accomplished. What else?
Underdog.
Athlete.
Underdog.
Pro athlete.
Pro athlete, determined, Nike, GOAT, hero, athlete, brand, GOAT, basketball, hard worker, GOAT, right? GOAT. Do you see? He has a brand. Oh, for sure. How many of you have Jordans? Yeah, I got Jordans for sure. I'm always battling to try to get the sneaker color that I want whenever they go out, right? All right, so strong brand, right? All right, what about Queen Bee? What do y'all think? I'm looking in the chat. All right. Ooh, her. Yes. Queen, right? The it girl, Queen Bee, the Virgo, fierce, right? See how so many folk empowered, right? What else? Keep going. I'm going to give you another leader, multi-talented, always growing. Yes. Right. Hard worker, run the world, expensive, mogul. Yes. Yeah. These are things you think of, right? These are people. These are brands. They are brands. They are walking brands. All right, let's keep going. Since we're in the spirit of seeing Barbie everywhere in that brand, tell me what you think. Trendsetter, pink, iconic, pink, career woman, pink. Yes, the color comes up to your head. I love that. Trendy, childhood, white. Yes, iconic marketing, feminist, influencer, right? Whiteness, laugh out loud. That's what I think about too. Yes, white beauty centers, exactly what I think about too. Yes, confidence. Okay. All right, I'm gonna keep going. We're gonna move through this. We have two more. What about this one right here? Carla, I saw your facial reaction. Tell me more. What is that? What was your facial reaction? What was the emotion that just came out? Carla Barajas.
They had way too much power over lots of Latinos all over. I don't know how many states it reached, but I know people took their word for granted.
What else? Let's see. I'm gonna look in the chat. Cultura, mucho amor. Yes, his phrase comes up. Right? Icon, astrology, magic, amor, nostalgia, astrology, paz y amor. Another phrase he would say, right? Or they would say. Culture, warmth, love, Univision. All right. So a network, a channel. All right. Last one here. And last but certainly not least, my favorite, El Conejo Malo. What do we think about when we see Bad Bunny here?
Taking the time. Clearly there was a lot of energy around.
Oh, I don't know if that was somebody's sharing. So unmute yourself. Type it in the chat. Influence, pushing boundaries, inclusive, barrier breaker, pop culture, right? Conejo, yes, perreo. I love that. Bad Bunny, baby, yes, creative. Gender expansive and yep, fashion, PR pride, right? So the purpose of us doing this quick activity is to share what, right? People have strong brands, right? But each of those people, they're very different types of brands, right? That they've created. Some of you even associated with the channel, some of you associated with a shoe, some of you associated with an identity, a personal identity, right? Some of you had nostalgia. It brought you back to when you might have been a kid, right? I definitely remember my mom calling me like, shh, okay, don't talk. Leo's coming up. They're going to start talking about Leo's next, right? And shut me up whenever the TV was coming on, right? Very vivid memory of that, right? I'm an Aquarius. So what do people think about when they think about you? So let's talk about actually the nitty gritty of a brand. What is a brand, right? So I want you to think about it I put it, a B stands for the blueprint, right? So a brand boils down who you are and why you do it. It's at the essence of who you are. So when you think about brand, you think about B, it is the blueprint of who you are, right? It gets to the core, but it makes it digestible. So that question that I had, break it down to a fifth grader, that's when we're going to start thinking it here, right? The blueprint. How do I explain the blueprint to a fifth grader, right? Really make it digestible. So I want you to think about that. The second is R in brand, which is relationship. I talked about relationships earlier, right? And how relationships that I've carved out, whether that be the thoughts or feelings or the psychological relationship between business and the consumer. Right. So I'm always thinking about that as a company owner, but I'm also thinking about that personally, right? People will work with me at Uproot because they trust me. They know that they're going to get an experience as a candidate that's going to look out for them, right? I'm going to have their best interest and I'm going to have your candidates. As a candidate, I'm going to have your back, right? And so that's why people work with me, right? And so again, think about what is the relationship that you have to yourself and consumers. The consumers, everybody in your social media, everybody who will Google you, everybody who you work with, literally every single person you touch, is the person you should be thinking about relationships, right? Now, the A in brand is the agreement. What is the agreement, right? That, in other words, what the consumer will experience. What's the guarantee? That every time you interact with me, you are guaranteed that I will engage with you in a certain way, right? That whether that's my content, whether that's my business, whether it's what I offer, my services to the public, right? It needs to be consistent. There needs to be consistency in your brand, right? So me talking about, I talk a lot about like white supremacy culture. If I posted something like Blue Lives Matter, people would be like, that can't be, did somebody hack you, Stephanie? Did you really post that? Right? Because people know that is not related to the content that I post. It also know it goes against my values as a human being, as a person, right? And they know that I wouldn't post something like that because of the work that I do, right? So people already have an agreement, right? Between what I do, how I do it, who I am, and what I put out in the world. There is consistency in my brand. If you go to my LinkedIn, there is consistency in the types of things that I post. That is not a happenstance. That is by design, right? That is by design. So I want you to think about that for you. The N in brand is the nature, right? The nature of your business and objective. This is the personality. I want you to think of nature when you think of the personality, the character, the style, right? When I connect with you, my nature is that I'm keeping it real, right? I'm using quote unquote colloquial language. I'm not using these big lofty, I'm talking to you like I would talk to my homie, right? That's what you're going to get. Even though I'm a workshop, I talk to a CEO on the phone. I'm not code switching. I don't do that, right? They're going to get exactly who I am. And that's it. That's who they're going to get, right? But it's also the emotions and the ideas that others get about you, right? And your brand, right? So when you talked about Bad Bunny, what are the feelings that you get from Bad Bunny or Beyonce, right? When they come up on the screen, right? That is the nature of your brand, right? So when you think about N, brand, nature, right? And then when you think about D, I want you to think about distinction, right? What you bring to the space that's unique, right? Nobody is you. And that's what makes your brand special. No one has the exact story that you have, period, full stop. You are unique. The lens you bring in this world is unique. Your talents and your gifts are different. They're how you share it. You're not just a general, program manager. What type of program manager are you, right? How are you framing that to the world, right? You're not just somebody who loves to do work in the community. There is a niche that you have, a distinct niche of the type of community work that you do and why you do that community work, right? It's the story that you tell to everybody else about you, right? It's yours and no one else has it. So we're going to talk about these things and break them down a little bit more. Any questions before we move forward, or thoughts or reflections on this concept, this framework that we created around branding? I'm looking at the chat too. Any thoughts, questions, reflections before we move forward? Yes, Karina. I see your hand up.
I'm just in awe of the concept of calling it cultural capital. We know that as somebody that doesn't have, for example, the generational wealth, we have to build our social capital. But being in these spaces that are designed to exclude us when we are bringing these perspectives, to see it as cultural capital, I greatly appreciate that context.
I'm glad you brought that up, Karina, and I appreciate you just naming that. That's often not the lens that we center or uplift in our work, right? There's financial capital. You talked about financial wealth. There's social capital. That's who you know, your relationships, your network. But often we don't talk about our own cultural capital, right? I have a whole workshop on cultural capital, but today you're going to be doing one of the activities. So I love that you brought that up right now. So again, who are you without your titles and accolades? We actually don't have enough time to break out into a 10-minute breakout group. But what we're going to do is an individual reflection and share out loud. So right now, I want you to think about more digest it. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to individually reflect. I want you to brainstorm, right? A good way for you to think about this is in the middle, put a circle with your name, and then put little bubbles that stem from you. And I want you to just brainstorm one word, right? Who are you, right? What's your story? What do you value, right? And I want you to think about that. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to reflect, but this is obviously work. This is not something you're going to achieve in 15 minutes or even an hour workshop, right? This is what you're going to take after today to work on, right? To figure out. So I'm going to put some music in the background. I'm going to have you reflect on these 2 questions more intentionally. Alexia, I know that you shared like a 1 sentence. I want you to dig deeper, right? Who are you really? And think about my own radical story, right? What's your radical story? What's your radical introduction? So I'm going to give you all 3 minutes. I'm going to put my timer. Does anybody have any questions before we dive in? I don't see any hands. All right. So 3 minutes. Go ahead. Yep. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
For the titles, are we talking about professional titles or these things like being a daughter and all that?
Oh, that's a great question. We're talking about professional type. We're talking about your identity as a professional. Who are you outside of your identity as a professional? So everything else outside of your work title, a degree, maybe if you're a student that you're getting, the institution, like I went to this college and other people know about it, right? Outside of those things, or I'm a Hope Fellow, right? I'm a fellow. Outside of those things, who are you? What's your story? Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm gonna put the timer on. I'm gonna put some music to think. And then we'll come back in 3 minutes and we'll see who is open to share. I'm gonna put one of my favorite songs. Feel free to turn off your screen, your video, so you can think.
Tanto tiempo disfrutamos de este amor, nuestras almas se acercaron tanto así, que yo guardo tu sabor, pero tú llevas también sabor a mí.
Si negaras mi presencia en tu vivir, bastaría con abrazarte y conversar. Tanta vida yo te di que por fuerza tienes ya sabor a mí.
No pretendo ser tu dueña, no soy nada, yo no tengo vanidad. De mi vida doy lo bueno, soy tan pobre que otra cosa puedo dar. Pasarán más de 1000 años, muchos más, y yo no sé si tengamos la eternidad, pero allá tal como aquí, en la boca llevarás sabor a mí.
All right, like half a minute left. I know it went by fast. Half a minute. So wrap up your thoughts, at least for now, and then we'll discuss. Right. 10 seconds. Coming back, please come back. If you are still in deep reflection mode, start transitioning out of it. All right, so who is down, who has not shared already, to share some of their story? What's your story? What's your radical introduction? Feel free to unmute.
Share.
All right, go ahead.
So my name is Vanessa Flores. I'm an intern here at Hope. And it's not too much of a structured sentence because I was throwing out things that I am. So I would say I'm the youngest daughter of Mexican immigrants, embodying a unique combination of skills such as being inclusive, a risk taker, resilient, determined, open-minded, and in a constant pursuit of perfection, even though I know it doesn't happen.
Well, one, I appreciate your candor, right, on that, and just being open to say, hey, that's something that I know that maybe I could work on, but also just love that you started to throw out one word, right? The resilience, started to throw out some other words that really resonate to you in your story. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to jump in?
I'll jump in.
All right.
My name is Melissa Fernandez. I work for Showtime under Paramount, and starting to become very active with Hope. My story is I'm an only child of immigrant parents from the Dominican Republic and the Netherlands, married to a Mexican man with immigrant parents and 10 siblings. I have 3 kids that I'm looking to raise with humility, integrity, and culture in a predominantly white upper class environment. And then I didn't finish, but
yeah, I appreciate just your it felt like I got a glimpse into who you were in a very short amount of time, but then also I got to know your partner. I got to know a little bit about that you're a parent as well. I got to know a little bit more about where you're raising your kids as well. And so that was wonderful. Have you ever introduced yourself in that way, Melissa?
No, I mean, it's really interesting. I've met because I work for an entertainment company, I feel like a lot of that usually comes first, right? Like it stands out, it's a big corporation. And so I do tend to kind of hang my hat on that. But like the timing of this is really interesting. I'm at a crossroads of self-evaluation and, what is the type of career that I want to have, and what is it that I want to give back, or what I want to hang my hat on. So.
Well, thank you. That was profound. I appreciated that. So we're going to keep going with this. I know we don't have much time left, and I want to make sure we get through a couple of activities. And then also we can't get through all of online branding, but I'm going to leave you with some LinkedIn gems, as I'm a big advocate of everybody having a LinkedIn. But also, as Melissa shared, this is also an opportunity for you to think about, what's your bio, right? You read my bio, you see my bio, right? Well, what's in your bio? Right. And I think as somebody who recently met my sibling sisters, my Hope sisters, with the Binational Fellowship, we talked about that a little bit, right? We're like, oh, so much is missing from our bios sometimes that we often don't talk about or highlight. And sometimes it's the first thing people read about us or learn about us, right? So hopefully this gives you some ideas as to how you talk about yourself and how you create that bio that really highlights who you are, right, in your story. So we're going to talk about a little bit more about cultural capital. We're not going to get into the theory of cultural capital, but what I will get into is that cultural capital is your lived experience. It is the culture you grew up in, that you come from. It is the strengths, the gifts that come from your culture, things like being bilingual, things like small, what we would consider in the world as not soft skills. Right here at Uproot Talent, we call those your power skills, right? Being able to read a room, being able to do oftentimes what people say, oh, that's not a skill, that's a soft skill. Here, we're really reframing that, right? And thinking about our culture and as capital, right? As capital, not just financial capital, social capital, economic capital, but we're adding culture in there as well, in the mix of the capital that we bring to a space. So I'm going to actually give you all access to this. I'm going to drop this link in the chat. It's going to take you to this page here, right here. All right. It's going to take you to this page here. Now, I want you all to make a copy on your own computer, or you can download it, whatever works best for you. But I'm going to give you a few minutes. I want you to highlight all of the power skills that pertain to you, right? I want you to, don't mark up this document here. but I want you to highlight what are some of, there you go. What are some of my skills, my power skills, right? My cultural capital. You're going to see some things in here that are non-traditional that you probably never realize is a skill, right? Because the world has been telling us that they're not skills, right? Or that they're not hard skills, quote unquote hard skills. We call them power skills, right? So this is part of getting your story, but also what is the expertise that I'm sharing with the world? What am I great at, right? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to look at this and start highlighting what skills pertain to me, right? You're going to make a copy or download it. Any questions before we start?
Cultural broker.
Yes, a cultural broker is somebody who navigates between multiple cultures. So if you are multicultural or bicultural, you are definitely a cultural broker. All right, here we go. 2 minutes.
¿Cómo fue? No sé decirte cómo fue. No sé explicarme qué pasó. Pero de ti me enamoré. Fue una luz que iluminó todo mi ser. Tu risa como un manantial. Rego mi vida en fueron tus ojos o tu boca, fueron tus manos o tu voz. Fue a lo mejor la impaciencia de tanto esperar. Tú llegabas más, no sé.
1 more minute.
No sé decirte cómo fue, no sé explicarme qué pasó, pero de ti me enamoré.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up. Again, you have this worksheet, so you'll have time to sit with it and process a little bit more after today's conversation. I want to hear from one person or 2 people. What were you thinking what are your reflections after completing this activity? Did anything stand out to you? Were you ever like, I had no idea this was even a thing that I could claim as a skill or expertise? But it's different, right? It's a different perspective. Or was anybody shocked to see something on here? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Ability to assess power dynamics in a room. I think that's always something that I've held, and I know where energy leads and where leadership is present. And that also can help with strategic relationship building.
Yes, that's great, Amy. Thank you for naming that. Anybody else? One more person.
I would say the one that I was shocked to see on there was I analyze situation and people often, because I often just label that as me overthinking or me doing too much versus seeing it as a skill and owning it.
Yeah, and owning it. I love that last part of owning it, right? I was the kid where I was a chismosa kid, always in adults' business, should not be in adults' business. And guess what? That doesn't make any money now, right? Being the chismosa kid and always asking questions and trying to see, analyze situations is actually, it's a gift. if we cultivate it, right? If we nurture it, right? And so I really appreciate you naming that. Okay. So this is an activity, again, to get your thinking, right? To get you outside of what we normally think of, right? As the status quo of our story. What else, in addition to my story, is my expertise? What are my gifts? What are my talents? How am I sharing that with the world, right? So I'm going to leave you with a couple of tips here. First of all, I'm a big Navy fan, so you always see Rihanna in any of my workshops. So your LinkedIn, right? Your brand. We're going to give you and leave you with the last 5 minutes with some gems on how to amplify your LinkedIn. So I'm actually just going to take you to my LinkedIn, and we're gonna actually walk through some of those tips. All right. So first things first, right? Your headline, right? This is the first thing that people will see when they think of you. This is not your job title. This is not my job title. I put here actually what I help people do, right? In a one line. This is why I had you think about the fifth grader. How would you explain what you do to a fifth grader? Because it's going to help you think, what's my tagline? What's my headline, right? How do I share this quickly with somebody, right? So the best thing you can do here, and you can see how I separate it with this line here into different buckets, right? I would probably try to split your work up into 3 or 4 different buckets, no more than 4 different buckets. Right. So here I put what I do at my company, the fact that I'm the creator of this trademarked brand, right? This workshop, these trainings that I do. And I want to tell people that I have a new job board that we just launched for people of the global majority in social impact. It's like a LinkedIn for people of color. We name it as people of the global majority, right? We're not minorities. And so that is something that I want to share because I've been talking about it and now it's here, right? So I want to hook people into that, right? What do you also see here? This is real estate. This is prime real estate, right? What is your picture? What does it say about you, right? So make sure that as you're thinking about, what this image is, it's very important. This is prime real estate. It's what people see immediately when they go to your page. It could be something about what you believe in, right? It could be your values, right? Maybe a picture of somebody who you admire. Maybe it's social justice related if you're working in that. Maybe it's plants. If you're a big plant lover, you're going to be talking about it, right? Maybe it's your profession or your field, right? If I'm an engineer or I do work in science, maybe it's something related to science, right? So think about what is the image that I'm using. And then the other thing here is I have a public profile. What that means is you also get to include 5 different hashtags of things that you talk about, right? And so this is something for me, for people to follow me. It's like, hey, if you're going to follow me, I talk about these things, right? So it's an immediate way to catch people, right? So I have these hashtags, which is decolonizing career development, executive search, racial equity. Those are things that my brand, what I will always talk about on my page. Right. The other thing is if you're currently on the market and you're looking for opportunities, put that you're open to it. You don't have to put the image where it says now hiring in green, right? That might not be safe for you to do if you're currently at another job. But if you do have it open, your current employer cannot see that. Your current employer will not have access to see, or any recruiter or HR in your company will not be able to see that you are open to work. Right. So if that's something for you to do, if you are looking. The other thing is, this is my featured posts, right? When somebody comes to my page, you can feature posts. You can see that's me in AOC, my girl AOC. You can see the different types of posts. I even have a hashtag. Anytime I post something that I feel like I'm dropping a gem or giving you some thoughts, I always put mi gente. And I have hundreds of people following mi gente hashtag whenever I post. And they get an alert that I posted, right? So that's my brand, right? I'm thinking about my brand. Consistency, remember? Differentiating. Think about all the things we went over when we talked about brand, right? The other thing that you can see is post things that matter to you. Start to build your brand. If you are in college right now, this is the best way to do it. If you don't have enough followers, you're like, Start posting about things in the field, things that you care about, articles, reshare it with the thoughts of something, post data, new research if you're a researcher. If you're going to grad school, what type of grad school? Start posting around those different issues, right? People will start to gravitate and follow you because of the content that they get from you, right? And that's the same for Instagram. It's the same for all social media platforms, right? What are people going to expect, right? Remember we said consistency, right? You can definitely get that from me, right? Also, what is your bio? Your bio should be on here, right? And it's not 3 sentences about what you do. Remember, we're more than just our titles. I want to know who you are. And this goes for cover letters. This goes for when you're applying to jobs, when they ask you that question of, tell me about yourself. You are so much more than what your current title and job is. I want to know, as somebody who's interviewed over 600 people, right? Or actually thousands, but has actually selected 600 people. I want to know who you are. I could read your resume. I know that, but who are you genuinely, authentically? What is your radical introduction? That's what I want to know, right? So make sure that bio, and this goes hand in hand with how you introduce yourself in an interview, whether you're going to grad school, whether you're going to a next job, right? All of it is connected. All of it is connected. This is all your brand, right? Now, you'll see that LinkedIn, I have a summary. This is not a resume. My resume looks different, but I have a general summary of what I did in that job, right? I have a general summary. And then on the bottom, I put the mission of the organization. So people don't have to go Google what Foster America was. They can literally just say, oh, this is what they do, right? They can go to and notice that I don't have bullet points. It's just a quick summary. Look, quick summary. Same thing here, consistency. I founded this statewide organization, summary, right? Summary. So you can do that, right? The other thing is, this is where you put here, where is my volunteer experiences? Here, they name it as volunteering, right? These are all your non-paid jobs. In the resume, I call that, and I reframe it as community engagement and leadership development. I don't put volunteer and then I put my jobs under there. So your Hope Fellowship would be under leadership development and community engagement on your resume, right? Again, how are you framing it? Because that's what it is, right? Even though it's non-paid, this is what it is, right? So it's how we frame it. It's how I'm putting out to the world what my brand is, right? I'm going to scroll down. You can see that I have 39 different skills here. This is very important. You might not think it's important, but it is. As somebody who recruits people, 87% of the people that I find for jobs and executive level come from LinkedIn. And I have to find you by typing in different skills. Okay, see these endorsements, right? These are different skills that I have. Nonprofits, over 100 endorsements, right? You want to go tell your homegirls, homies, people you've worked with, go endorse me for these skills, right? It's okay to do that. I did that very early in my career on LinkedIn, right? So you want to continue to do that and what the skills, because as a recruiter on this side of things, I'm able to find you and message you about jobs, not the other way around. I slide in your inbox about opportunities, right? And I'm only able to do that if you're doing all of these things. If you have buzzwords under each of these descriptions, if you have a bio, I can learn about you. All of this is all AI. They use artificial intelligence. So that way you pop up on my end. Okay. I'm going to close out, right? It's already 5 minutes beyond. People who stuck on, thank you. Any questions or thoughts? Actually, let's just take questions. Anybody who can stick on, I'd love to answer questions. And then, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you all, if you haven't created a profile, it's free. It's called the Uproot Talent Network. You can go to, and this is if you're in social impact, right? These are only for people who are in social impact, foundations, nonprofits, education, government work, right? You can go to careers.uproottalent.co, create a profile, and you can start searching for jobs. We just launched it, so we're actively adding jobs to it. And then this is my company website, and you can always go there, contact me, and see all the things that we do at Uproot Talent, right? So I'm going to close out here, stop sharing, and who has questions? I can stick on for another 5 minutes. And you're welcome for folks that are jumping off. Thank you for joining us.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, you talk about consistency. How consistently do you post, like whether it's your social media or your LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I have a personal page. Some of y'all follow me on my personal page, Purpose Household. That's like my own individual page. I honestly post on my story a lot more than my actual timeline, but I only share things like family and things that normally like it's not a public page, right? My page is private. But my Uproot talent page, my company page, every Monday through Friday, every day. Right. And that's my public profile. That's my company. I actually pay somebody to create. I have a fractional chief marketing officer. They take care of all of it. I do ads. I do all of that. On my LinkedIn, I post at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. And I post on my company page on LinkedIn, Monday through Friday, every day.
Thank you.
If you follow me on LinkedIn, you could also see the kinds of things. You kind of get an idea, right, of like the things that I post about. But they have to be connected to you, right? It's not about my brand. Like, what do you love, right? What are you passionate about? That's what you want to post about. Other questions?
I have a question. So I do appreciate all the tips, but I think it's like some of it's being very vulnerable, right? To share like your bio and stuff. So what is some like advice to like, you know, yeah, I'm just thinking like, oh my gosh, if I shared this, I would just like be judging myself or, you know, feeling some type of way. So what are ways that we can kind of get over that?
Yeah. You don't have to quote unquote, get over it. I think you share what you're ready to share. Okay. If you're not ready to share something, don't share it. I early in my career did not share all the things that I share now with you all. Even growing up with a single mom and my experiences like with an estranged dad that I don't talk to, like I would never share that early in my career. I just wasn't comfortable at that time. Right. So I think it's you share whatever you're ready to share. And I think there's parts of us that sometimes, depending on your identity, you're not safe to share. Right. So I think it's also important for you to recognize like, what's my safety? Sometimes if you're in a job where people say, show up authentically. Yeah, that's easy for somebody who's like white presenting, I'm cis, I'm heterosexual, right? Like, yeah, maybe I could show up authentically in a different way. And for some other people that might actually not be safe. Right. And so you have to assess your safety and whether or not some things are safe to share versus not. That's what I would say. But you share whatever you're comfortable with sharing. But I do think getting under some layers of just like what you do and who you are, there's some things that I think you can still tap into.
Thank you, Stephanie. I don't know if we have any more questions. We'll just take one more.
Okay, and please fill out the survey. Would love your feedback. It's how Hope continues to do these types of workshops and see like, do we need something different, right? So give some feedback, please. One more question.
I have a question. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I have a question.
I can hear you.
Okay. It's just a quick one. So basically, as for people who are still, you know, in college and still developing their skills and their resumes, basically, would you recommend that our LinkedIn be more of what we hope to do, what we're striving to do in the future? Because, like, for example, I don't necessarily have a lot that I'm doing right now since I'm still developing, I could say. But I hope to become like a sustainable planner. I hope to understand types of organizations. So would mine more of just what I hope to?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. So I think it's a mix of both. I think it's sometimes we say like, I'm not doing much or I don't have a lot of experience, but you do, right? Like one of the things that I had on my LinkedIn early on was like, I was a youth organizer in my community. It wasn't an official job. I didn't get paid, but we were the first city in the country to defeat Walmart from coming into our city in Inglewood. Right. And that's something that on LinkedIn, like it's not under work experience, but I put that on there. Right. So also think about what are some of the things that you've done. Clubs. I'm a founder of a Latina sorority on my campus. We did a lot of work Whoop, whoop. Yep, I see some sisters in here. But you know, there was a lot of things that we did on the community, like Cambio Academy that we founded was a result of my sorority, which is a youth mentorship program for girls of color. And we started it in Watts, and it moved to Inglewood, and it moved to other places, right? So there are things that you can definitely put on your LinkedIn that I would love for you to highlight, that talk about who you are, that's quote unquote volunteer work, right? Engagement, student clubs, things like that. And at the same time, you can also put things around like aspiring urban planner, right? And what you would love to get into, right? And then the tip here is you start to add people in that field. Go search for people with titles of urban planner or program manager or engineer or computer science, whatever you're trying to get into, and start to build your network of people in that. And whenever you add somebody, send them a note. Say like, I'm an aspiring computer scientist, I'm an aspiring urban planner, and would love to grow my network in this field. Add them, right? I have tons of, I don't know those 9,000 people that follow me on LinkedIn. I don't know, like not even half of them, right? But those are people who have added me that are in the field, right? And so you can do the same. So start building that network on LinkedIn. It is a very powerful network of decision makers. These are the people who are making decisions every day about hiring, about grad school, about all those things. So you want to be on there active, even if you're an undergrad, or I would say especially as an undergrad, to really build that out. And my background is in urban planning too.
Oh, that's super cool. Thank you.
Carla says, talk to me about urban planning. She just dropped her link. Thanks, Carla.
Well, I know it's past some of the minutes that we had anticipated, but thank you so much, Stephanie, for all the knowledge that you shared today. Thank you for everybody for joining. I hope everybody's leaving this webinar feeling more connected to yourself and more grounded. So thank you, Stephanie, once again. Before you go, I know my colleague shared a link for the survey, so we always appreciate the feedback. So please, if you can do it right now, copy the link and make sure you do it as soon as you can. Also, we have another webinar August 15th, and that is Beyond Your Bachelor's Exploring Grad School. So it's open again to current and former grad students. And if anybody wants to join, I'll drop the link as well so you can register. But other than that, thank you once again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank y'all. Bye.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be well, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.